Thank you very much for inviting me for this special session. I must congratulate for choosing a very inspiring topic. As I was hearing a general counsel speak from her perspective, I was recalling, what am I going to talk about? But nevertheless, let me try and just make good use of my next 20 minutes to share my perspectives. The younger generation of lawyers, which is what we are currently dealing with, should undoubtedly, as it was mentioned very clearly, embrace not just the new developments, but also the manner in which you go about with the job of advocacy. As was correctly again pointed out, that recent changes, whether they are on COVID front or the geopolitics front, has, in my view, fast-tracked fairly the entire regulatory environment. More importantly, we see a big change in the day-to-day work that we do, which is the justice dispensation system, whether it's e-filing, e-servicing, e-hearing. We hear about it every day. And the young lawyers are responsible or more attuned to the innovation to boost this new way of advocacy, I would say. And lastly, it is more important for the new lawyers to recognize that they would be instrumental in contributing to achieving India the $5 trillion economy target. Well, let's try and look at what the laws and trends I see in 2022 and beyond. Well, there are a flurry of legal developments spread across a host of sectors, but I just thought I will touch on 2-3 important themes. Let me first touch on an important theme which is close to my heart, which also happens to be my area of practice, which is tax. Well, the most important event that typically tax practitioners look out for is the presentation of the budget. I'm not going to go and speculate what the budget is going to contain, but I'm just going to take some guesses over here, more from the point of view of the keynote session that you have, which is trends to watch out in 2022, and those trends would be visible in the budget of 2022. Well, for the first time, the world has recognized that the 100-year-old tax treaty system needs to be redefined, reoriented. Many landmark developments have taken place, including in 2021. India, for the first time, is a part of a major multilateral network, which is working under the aegis of OECD and supported by G20, including India, to align what is called taxation of digital commerce or digital businesses. It essentially moves away from the concept of what are the contractual responsibilities between the parties to look at how do you align value creation in market jurisdictions. Simplistically stated, is it important to tax digital transaction based on the number of subscribers that market jurisdictions such as India would have, given its large population, or should it be based on some other contractual obligation, the latter being a determination which was made under the erstwhile law? Well, 5 years back, if somebody had asked us, is this likely to change? I would have said, this sounds like a mere mirage, but it's changing. And you will see some of the announcements possibly in this year's budget. We all know the landmark equalization levy law, which, though legislated in 2016, broadened its horizon in 2020, just as the country slipped into the COVID era. A lot of criticism. The equalization levy law, which was in lieu of income taxes, brought about a lot of reaction. The most important reaction came from the US trade representative, and they initiated what they call it as a 301 investigation under the US trade laws. These 301 investigations are initiated under the trade laws on the ground that these forms of levies are discriminatory against US enterprises. Well, in the middle of the 301 investigations, we saw just a few months back an important truce that was called, or I would say a ceasefire between India and the USA negotiators on trade front, which would restrict the application of equalization levy to as it stands now, including the rate of tax. And more importantly, it will mean that suitable credits will be given to US residents in their parent country. Well, many changes to look forward to the budget. The last important one that I wanted to make a mention about, as you know, the budget exercise is also an exercise wherein the finance minister announces important policy changes. What is expected again in 2022 is a future of free trade agreement. We all know that India withdrew from the RCEP, the Regional Economic Cooperation Agreement, last year. And hence, one-on-one country negotiations have taken place for what is called a limited free trade agreement. United Kingdom, EU, Australia, US, UAE, Israel are some of the countries with which we are expecting reviewing of our existing bilateral and multilateral trade relationships. And some directions will emerge as a part of the policy announcement, along with the budget, which the Ministry of Commerce will take forward. Let me try and look at now a few themes on the topics, the regulation of cryptocurrency. Well, the government of India, with the most awaited cryptocurrency and regulation of official digital currency bill 2021, is expected to be tabled in 2022. Finally, in my view, it will lead an element of clarity if crypto assets can be strictly regulated or completely banned. The argument is very diverse in our country, and the views are divided. Depending on the stand of the government, questions could get raised insofar as the cross-border nature of transactions of crypto assets are concerned. The tax impact, the ability to raise funds using crypto as a collateral, the penal provisions, so on and so forth. Blockchain should be, as we know, increasingly used for public and private enterprises, irrespective of the regulation of cryptocurrency. Sometimes cryptos and crypto business are often misunderstood. In December 2021, celebrating Azadi Ka Digital Mahotsav, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, who happens to be, before he became a politician, now he's a Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology. He was a businessman. He was an entrepreneur, and he is a techie. He released what is called the National Strategy on Blockchain. And the blockchain technology he clearly emphasized as application in healthcare, governance, ability to provide government services, cybersecurity, automobiles, media, travel, logistics, energy, legal, so on and so forth. So you see the potential for blockchain is very wide. And hence my personal conclusion was that it is in national interest to look at crypto as an avenue for important medical services, particularly in a country like India, farm insurances, public delivery services, electronic voting, vehicle life management. There are so many applications for which cryptocurrency regulations will make sense. That's a very important trend I'm looking forward to, and it's likely to happen, and it will happen in 2022. The second point I wanted to touch was on data privacy and cybersecurity laws. I'm not a data privacy and cybersecurity expert, but I have been very keenly, interestingly watching at the development. Well, the background is that the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Personal Data Protection Bill of 2019 was released in December 2021. There are groundbreaking developments which are anticipated in 2022 surrounding data privacy and protection. And the bill has a cross-border reach insofar as application of entities outside India is concerned, as if they have a business connection in India, as we say, for tax purposes, or they are carrying out some profitable activity in India. Well, this will raise many questions for lawyers about the extraterritoriality, and obviously, large technology companies who are concerned about it could see challenging some of these provisions. Interestingly, the scope of the bill clearly suggests that it extends beyond the ambit of data protection. For example, the bill covers an overarching extension on social media intermediaries, publishers of data in certain instances where they lose money, their immunity, or are mere hosts of content. The requirement for social media platforms operating in India to have local offices, setting up of a statutory media regulatory authority, and the recommendations of the framework need to be established for the monitoring, testing, and certification of hardware devices, a provision which is not usually in data protection laws, particularly in the EU and in the United States. In my view, the data security and cyber laws is an attempt to grant users more control over the data and introduces a provision called data portability, wherein the data principals, people who own the data, may seek from the data fiduciary consumers their personal data in a commonly used and machine readable form. Well, there is a health angle here as well. And the health data retention policy, which also finds a very important mention in the Cyber and Securities Protection Bill of 2019, will help build massive data which will be collected pretty much after the COVID-19 vaccination. This policy will ensure in recording data across a host of facilities in India and can be used as a very, very important point of reference for any kind of a health crisis that breaks out in the future in terms of making sure that citizens in the interiors of the country are appropriately treated. So this is the health data retention policy is a very important mention in the 2019 bill. Well, I'll just add by throwing in some other important trends that I see on employment laws, besides the new labor codes becoming applicable from 2022, a robust framework surrounding work from home policies and gig workers is needed. Many countries are talking about it. We haven't, but I'm hopeful that this would be a future trend. Let me very briefly also focus on the importance of ADR, and I'm not going to talk about the arbitration law. My focus is on the mediation bill of 2021, which was introduced in the winter session of the Parliament. It is the most comprehensive institutional mediation, not arbitration, recognition and enforcement of domestic and international mediation settlement systems. I have no doubt in my mind that it will undoubtedly prove to overcome the notorious delays that we see in dispensation of justice with use of advanced technology, new inputs and inventions. As per the statistics revealed by the central government, the number of pending cases as on December 2021 has now crossed 4.6 crore mark. That's a whooping 46 million cases. So that's another trend that I see. Finally, on insolvency, we've heard the setting up of the bad banks. I anticipate this will come as a policy announcement. It's being sponsored by large lenders and backed by the government of India. And it is a remembrance to a very big problem that the country has, which is the bad loans or the non-performing assets, as we call it. The new entity which is being talked about, the National Asset Reconstruction Company, is very important. We just saw the largest bank in India, State Bank of India, Chairman Dinesh Kumar Khara, talking about this very passionately. He said that he is looking at this as a bid to clean up the books, and State Bank of India just is likely to transfer 15 major stressed assets aggregating 50,000 crores. This is just one bank, and they are likely to do it before March 2022. Well, lots to look forward to. I'm going to end over here because I've gone past my allotted time. I'd just like to say in closing, are these general trends here to stay? Well, yes, India should focus on building robust infrastructure by enhancing the voice and video capabilities, and thereby converting courts to provide what, in my view, is visible and audible justice. That is going to be the demand, not just from people who are seeking justice, but also lawyers who are regularly advocating in the court. As a concluding message for young lawyers, well, I would say the key here is learn, unlearn, and relearn. This is our biggest takeaway from the pandemic as we come out of it. I'd like to quote the Honorable present Chief Justice of India when he said, "We must all strive to protect the reputation and the integrity of the profession, and the responsibility to a larger extent lies on the younger lawyers." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Butani. Really, so many trends to watch for. And you mentioned the mediation bill. I thought the question comes to mind, and who better to ask than you? Tax has been kept out of the purport of the mediation bill. What are your thoughts on that? That is not something that is happening the world wide over. There are jurisdictions that allow tax disputes to be settled through mediation. Uh, how soon do you see that trend coming to India? And what are your thoughts on this?
The question has two elements to it. One is domestic disputes, where second is cross-border disputes. As far as domestic disputes is concerned, we made one small start in last year's budget by setting up BAR. BAR is Board of Approvals, and a mechanism, but the threshold to apply is for income less than 5 million rupees. That's an experiment. I'm hoping that that experiment will go forward and it will apply to all forms of disputes. I think the question is a bit more complex when it comes to cross-border disputes. India believes, rightly or wrongly, that tax is a sovereign function and cross-border disputes should be settled between governments under what we call it as a mutual agreement procedure under the treaty. And if that procedure fails, there shouldn't be any mandatory arbitration. Well, the world is moving in a different direction. They are calling for mandatory arbitration, which was also what the OECD prescribed in the 2017 Model Convention. I'm hopeful that India will move. Again, a small start has been made. If you look at the entire inclusive framework under the two-pillar solution, the determination of allocation, India is submitting itself when it comes to digital taxation. But I think we are a bit far away from having tax arbitration in our treaties. Hopefully, we will get over our definition of sovereignty of the tax function and look at arbitration in a much more active manner.
Thank you so much, Mr. Butani. And your message to the young lawyers, of course, you've shown light on so many new avenues that are coming up. Crypto is to watch for in that discipline of law, certainly. Any other, words of encouragement for a young 30 under 30 brigade of lawyers?
Well, I liked what the previous speaker spoke about. Lawyering or advocacy is no longer what at least my generation grew up looking at it, where you are supposed to go to the, look at the statute and defend your client. It's all about, understanding deeper the client's business process. It's all about the focus on policy. So I think that's what gives a 360-degree view to a lawyer. I think lawyering is all about multifaceted experience on how the policy evolves, how the policy is implemented, what is your understanding of the client's business, and then, of course, the core, which is the advocacy part of it. So I think lawyers are more like now multidisciplinary professionals than merely lawyers.
Thank you, Mr. Butani. Always a pleasure to meet you and learn from you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting Ashima. Thanks and good luck to everyone at the Business World Legal, as well as all the participants. Thank you.